Ja, nagatsi hinu hadkish dikyang. My Haida name is Fox. Dang esh di goodnight logging. I'm happy to see you. Welcome to our newest edition of Haida Language and Etymology. I want to talk today a little bit about conversation and speaking styles in Haida language and how those might be different from other cultures. A lot of our nonverbals in different cultures can be very different. So when you're learning a new language, that's one of the things that you want to kind of go out of your way to pay attention to. In Haida, in Alaskan Haida, which I'm most familiar with, it's common to, for example, introduce your grandmother, your non, before yourself, and your moiety, if you have one, if you happen to be part of the native community. And there are some gender differences in the way that Haida is spoken. For example, the word father, I think I've mentioned before, is had in for a female speaker, and it's hung for a male speaker. So they sound very, very different, and that's sort of gender differences, much like the way you would speak Japanese as a female might be different than the way a male would speak Japanese. That's sort of one of those cultural things you might not think about if you're predominantly an English speaker. Another thing about nonverbals in intercultural communication, you want to be mindful of stuff like eye contact, the distance that you are away from other people, because those are also things that are culturally determined. I think in the West, in America in particular, we tend to like more personal space than is necessarily customary in other parts of the world, right? So someone coming up to an American who weren't an American may kind of invade that person's bubble more than they mean to, just because we have different cultural expectations about things like social distance. Eye contact is a really important one of those to remember in, Western, the dominant American culture, which I'm going to speak to because I'm in the United States, is really concerned with eye contact, right? It's supposed to be like a show of assertiveness if you maintain eye contact, if you're unafraid to maintain eye contact with a person. But in other cultures, such as indigenous North American cultures, maintaining constant eye contact during a conversation can be very off-putting or might be seen as aggressive. So that's something to remember. You want to pay attention to those kinds of social cues when you're learning other languages as well. So I'm going to go over just some greetings and departures and get, some Haida language in here. And then I'm going to go over my own, how I would introduce myself as I've practiced introducing myself in Haida so that you can hear it. And I'm going to just do that uninterrupted with no English interceding. So, without further ado, our first sentence is Atlan eich is eich die goodnai laging. Atlan is eich die goodnai laging. I'm happy to be here. Sen u ayat dang hegang. How are you today? Sen u ayat dang hegang. How are you today? Then we have Sen u dalang hegang. How are you folks? Sen u dalang hegang. In response to that, you can say Dilagang. I'm well. Dilagang. Or, if you're not well, Gam kundi laangang. I'm not all that well. Gam kundi laangang. Notice that the opposite of well, lagang, is laangang. So we've put that ang in the center, which kind of makes it the opposite of logging, as far as I'm aware. You can negate a lot of words in Haida by that method. Di lagang gam kun di laangang. Then we have Haus Klistluan Dang Kingsang. I'll see you again sometime. Haus Klistluan Dang Kingsang. And finally, Digui Stich. Digui Stich. Return to me, or come see me again. So those are, the kind of things that hello and goodbye type stuff that you'll say commonly and hear a lot. And that's a really good introduction to practicing speaking Haida with your friends and family. Sen u dalang hedang. How are you guys? That's the kind of thing that you want to be sharing with people when they're not that familiar. Now, for my own introduction, first, I'm going to introduce my grandmother, as is customary, and some of my family members, and illustrate how I would talk about those people. And the translation will be included, but I'm not going to speak the English again. I just want to get the kind of flow of Haida in there. And disclaimer as well, I am primarily an English speaker, and I'm from the southern United States. I do not have the best pronunciation of any Haida speaker. I am a beginning learning Haida speaker, and I'm just fascinated by the language. So please, if you're interested in Haida or in these videos, go see Susie's videos or any other storytellers. There are excellent resources out there on YouTube. This is just something I want to share because it's meaningful to me and the language is beautiful. So here's how I would introduce myself in Haida. Francis Dinan Uijang, Lida Di O Uijang, Wayne Di Hud Uinjang, Di tlal unusk hal takid la aigagang. Kian dus digit ishangas uijang hal tadai jaguang. Nagatsi hinu had kish di kiang. Had kill skat ang esh UAS. I'm learning Haida largely because of UAS making it accessible to me, and I am in the interest of making indigenous languages and endangered languages more accessible and commonly spoken by the public. So one of the things that is my favorite thing about indigenous languages and the way that indigenous people communicate is that storytelling plays such an important role culturally. So, storytelling is done as a way to provide space that is set apart from the present. It's a way of advising correct behavior in a community through allegory. And storytelling can offer guidance and criticism without creating conflict. And even though storytelling is such a common way of communicating moral things in indigenous communities, sometimes if it's included in common speech, people who are not native might perceive it as off topic or rambling, but it's really like a different way of communicating information allegorically without being conflict oriented. And I think just in typical American culture, English speaking culture, we use a lot of I statements where we are very, very assertive and forward in our speech patterns. And that's not necessarily the case with Haida. We might want to speak a little bit more in metaphor in Haida to explain, our perspective or how our perspective relates to the community. So these are things that are characteristic of Haida language that are not just Haida words per se. It's the way that we communicate in Haida, okay? So that's all I have for right now. Next time we'll be talking about Haida words for weather and the environment, toponyms, and Haida directions. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to subscribe and ring the bell. And the Managamp Kingu, House Dank King Sung.